And so I will stop sharing. Okay. So right now, I was waiting for my other board member to show. She was to do the intro, but we'll go ahead and get started. So to start us off today, we have Tina Lilly, currently the executive director for Georgia Council for the Arts. She is in part why we are all here, try to make her life just a little bit easier, and to give her a little more in her bank account for her to use and for her to distribute to all of the organizations and artists statewide. So Tina, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and as folks come in, I'll admit them. So don't forget, for everybody, I'm playing the host here, as well as Zoom Command Central. So I'll be multitasking, as they would say. Okay, Tina, I'll turn over to you.
Great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I know a good number of you, but for those that I don't, I'm Tina Lilly with Georgia Council for the Arts. Thank you so much all for being here yesterday and today, for your commitment to the arts and to arts advocacy in the state. It is very important, and we appreciate it very much. So Patrick asked me to give an update on what is up with GCA. So I'll give you a short summary, and then I am happy to answer whatever questions you have about GCA. So you may have talked about this already with someone from Americans for the Arts. Their latest COVID statistics show that approximately 2/3 of folks who identify as arts goers are back, seeing things live and in person, which is wonderful, but that leaves about 1/3 that still are not back. So I know our performing arts organizations, well, all of our arts organizations are still doing an incredible job muddling through and being creative. I have been very pleased and excited that we haven't heard of more shutting doors, but I think you guys know as well as I do, when you have creative folks in charge, they figure out some way to keep going and doing what they're doing. So in terms of GCA, we will be participating as a state partner in Americans for the Arts Art and Prosperity Study this year, which we have not done as far as I can remember. I've been with GCA about 15 years, but we have not participated on a state level. So I'm really excited about that. That is going to give us a lot more data. There are some regional partners, Savannah, Macon, Augusta, and hopefully Atlanta, that will be getting their own regional data, but it'll be really great to have those statewide numbers, so we can stand next to other sectors and say, we pull in big numbers too. So it'll be great to have that the second part of 23. But you should be hearing from me if you're with an arts organization, to ask you to do audience surveys, to ask you to send us budget information and financial information. I know everybody is busy, but if you can take a second to do that, that would be tremendously helpful for all of us that are trying to advocate for the arts across the state. So you'll be hearing more in the coming months and throughout 2022. We'll be working with Patrick on that and with Georgians for the Arts. So you'll hear from one of the two of us very soon. Strategic plan. GCA is due to put together our next strategic plan by the end of calendar 22. Since we put together our last plan, the world has changed dramatically. And we really need some input from you guys in terms of the world post-COVID. What is it other than money, which we know everyone needs, but what other types of support do you need as individual artists, as arts organizations? So we have a number of opportunities coming up to give feedback. You will be getting this information soon, and if you don't get it directly from me, I'll be passing it on to Georgians for the Arts, who will hopefully help us get the word out. But we will have 3 in-person town hall meetings across the state. We will have 3 virtual town hall meetings, and we'll also have an online survey. The dates for the in-person sessions, April 20th will be in Atlanta. May 2nd will be in Tifton, and May 3rd will be in Savannah. And I will get you all like locations, times, all of those things. I also hope you can help us pass that along, certainly to other artists and arts organizations, but it's really important for us to hear from city officials, local governments, local businesses, board members from arts organizations, teachers, all of these folks that can use the arts in so many different ways. And we want to make sure, while serving our arts organizations is vital and our primary focus, but that we're also opening up, especially now after COVID, to work with local governments, work with businesses, work with all types of different organizations and people to talk about how the arts can help with economic and community development across the state. So you will get that information soon. We will put those thoughts together and have a plan by the end of this fiscal year. But very interested in what you guys need now that COVID has changed everything we thought we knew. What else are we doing? Some of you may know this, but OPB, the Office of Planning and Budget for the state, was accepting grant applications for additional ARP funds for the state. So we applied on behalf of arts organizations in the state. They have not announced those grants yet. That was supposed to be in January, but I think they got more requests than they could handle. So we're hoping that some of that comes through. If it does, most of that money will go out in grants, in general operating and cultural facilities grants to arts organizations. Some will go towards a partnership with Georgia Center for Nonprofits for training for classes, either getting through COVID or whatever you think your organization needs. And some will be for projects specifically with rural communities. So we will keep our fingers crossed on that and hope that that comes through for everybody. For anybody, this is just a little announcement, anybody with an arts organization, the NEA is switching from requiring DUNS numbers to requiring what they're calling a unique entity identifier, a UEI, that is assigned by the website sam.gov. So if you're one of our grantees or applicants, you should have gotten instructions on that, and You don't have to do it right this second, but you do need to do it in the coming months. So if you have any questions, get in touch. We'll be glad to answer them. We are also working at the same time we're working on a strategic plan. The NEA has given us money to build a plan for traditional arts in the state. This is traditional arts, folk ways, living culture. There are lots of names for this study, but basically art forms that are passed on from person to person, from generation to generation, not those you go to school to learn. And so we want to come up with a plan to support those art forms in the state, to do what we can to document and preserve those traditions. So we're doing a lot of talking to folks, and in the coming years, hopefully can start small, but help grow that in the future. So that's something we're working on. And finally, we, some of you know this, that GCA manages an art collection for the state. It's over 600 pieces. The state collected from Georgia artists, starting in the 60s and going up to the early 90s. We have this, but we don't have a lot of funds dedicated to conservation and preservation for this collection. So we're also working on a plan. One, what's the best way to take care of it, to store these, take care of conservation work on all of these pieces? And secondly, what's the best way for us to utilize these pieces other than just hanging in the office? What can we do in the state with this resource for folks across the state and organizations? So we're working on that. So a lot of planning, a lot of talking, and we want to hear from you. So please attend, give us feedback on one of the strategic planning sessions, or call me or email me anytime. And this is what we'd love to see from GCA, or we wish we had this in the state, or could you help us with this? And if it's, you know, not something we can do, maybe we can partner with another organization or another state resource. But I would really love to hear from you. So that is the GCA update. I am happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
We are a small and mighty group. I see Priscilla.
Yes, Priscilla.
Hey,
Hi.
Tina. Thanks
Hey.
a million. So I'm now turning down the sound on my phone. Pardon me.
No problem.
I am now the proprietor of an arts space individually.
Oh,
I'm
so
not
excited.
a 501c3, and I know it's probably bootless. But what are we going to do to make it so that I can provide my services? Because you know me a long time, a little bit.
Mhm.
And I'm not getting rich, and I'm not caring about getting rich, but I'm providing serious opportunity for artists and
Yes.
a benefit. Not, I mean, I got kids coming up from Savannah that are playing in Atlanta. I got people from all over the state who play at my spot. And with any luck at all, it will continue to grow. We're becoming a destination for tourism in the city. I'm at Underground Atlanta. We're trying to make Underground Atlanta be what it once was. How do we make it so that we can get some support to do that? Is there anything we can do?
Yes, I think so. I think that for a long time, GCA has focused exclusively on nonprofit organizations and not on individual artists and not on the for-profit arts realm. But I think one that we can be, we can help suss out those resources with the state. You know, we can knock on like the Small Business Administration for the state. It's like, what's out there, the Department of Community Affairs, and maybe help funnel those resources to something that's manageable, like, hey, Priscilla, check out these 2 programs or these couple
Right.
things, rather than each of you individually having to wade through thousands of. So let me put that on my list of state resources. I think, yeah, I think too that we need to explore what we can do for individual artists.
Oh my goodness, yes. And you know, we used to do a little of that, and then everything got torpedoed unfairly, in my opinion, with the NEA 5 and the turn of the century. And that's been a very long time ago. And even though that was wrongly done, in my personal opinion, it was done. And so, you know, government support for individual artists is pretty tough to come by. Perhaps we've moved some in that, you know, away from there. I will say, if anything, I have deeper worries about the Georgia legislature doing anything about that in what I consider to be a positive way. But I guess, you know, and I hear what you're saying about being a small business. I think that's really wise, and maybe that's something we can advocate for and help the Georgia Council figure out ways of acknowledging and including small business money. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that we can talk about, you know, that do a better job of talking about that segment of the economy and the creative industries,
right,
to the folks in the government about the impact that it has. We have been, and we need to update them, pulling together economic impact numbers for the creative industries, for the larger. But yeah, I think
we got lots of numbers. So,
yeah, we got lots of numbers.
We got lots of numbers, and we got numbers too. So
yeah, but how, if we can't give money directly to individual artists, how can we kind of go around that? How can we?
And is there a way, you know, you somehow qualify as vendors for the GCA, so that as artists are looking for places, there's a list of people that are compliant X, Y, and Z, you know, sort of be pre-cleared as a venue for your presentations. That might be something we could consider doing. You know, I mean, you get on vendors list for government organizations all the time. Maybe we should think about doing something like that for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know Jessica has some thoughts on that, and I saw your hand go up.
Hi, Jessica.
Who was the keeper of the list for a long time.
Yes, that's right.
Tina, if I may ask, I know constitutionally, I believe that it's set up where you can't accept fiscal sponsors or fiscal sponsorship for grants. Is that correct? Or is that like a piece of legislation that could be supported?
No, that is a GCA internal decision.
Okay.
That we allow parent organizations, so, you know, the Woodruff Art Center, that those entities can apply under their FEIN and nonprofit status. We have not allowed we haven't allowed that, only because it's been very difficult, and the times we have made exceptions have ended up being messy. but that's not to say it can't work. And I would love to figure out some way to nurture those organizations that maybe don't need to become,
Right.
you know, that are going through a whole lot of trouble to get their nonprofit status when they don't need to. So I think
Yeah,
that's
I
definitely
agree.
a conversation that we can pursue. And since you have experience in that area, maybe that's something we can talk further about. But
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think that, with Fulton County, one of the things that they do is they put a limitation on it, right? So there's certain limits, money wise. So these newer entities are not necessarily competing with the entities that have been around or applying. But I think in rural communities, it could be a boon for individual artists, especially if they could find like a nonprofit partner to partner on an arts grant, like a library, or even working with a small business that say wants to do like wayfinding with a mural or something like that.
Right,
You know,
right.
think about it couched a little bit in economic development, and maybe there's certain criteria around that. Does the money go to an artist, a local artist, to support that person in a jobs initiative?
Yeah.
And so that's just something to think about. But yeah, I mean, if there's not, because I was going to ask if there's anything that would preclude that, but
No.
I understand it's in managing one, it's time intensive, and whatever percentage you charge, 8-10%, as the sponsor organization doesn't even begin to pay for the work that goes into it.
Right.
And the insurance liability gets kind of tricky too.
Yeah, the issue that we've run into is falling out in disagreements between the fiscal sponsor and the grantee. And then you're having to, referee those things or sort it out, when suddenly you want a fiscal sponsor that wants to pull out. But that, we can continue to try to sort that out. We do in rural community, well, in every community, an individual artist or a organization that does not have their nonprofit status can partner on a project with an eligible applicant. So you could partner with, a school, a library, any sort of nonprofit to do what you're saying, a mural, something like that. So we do allow that. What we don't allow is that fiscal sponsor who has nothing to do with the project other than, sure, you can use my number. And then, that's where we've run into trouble with.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And that keeps it IRS compliant as well.
Yeah. But yeah, we want to make ways that, like if Patricia has a project, but not the nonprofit, that, it can still happen, or individual artists, it can still happen. Cool. Other questions? Or
Thank you, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah, I think by way of that, from a monetary perspective, I mean, obviously, always more money is helpful. Fiscal sponsor is definitely one thing that's been on the table on several occasions. I know same thing down here in Savannah. We do it for the small amounts, not for the big amounts. We are also, smaller communities, so if anything goes wrong, we can walk down the street. I don't know of any larger fiscal sponsors that could handle a project professionally. But I think Fractured Atlas have had some activity here in the state. I know, Jessica, you had your C4 doing this too, but something down the line to reestablish that. Let me ask, it's another monetary question, but it's back to what Priscilla had mentioned. Here in Savannah, just using that as a model, they don't give money. They don't give a grant. They buy services.
Uh,
So through GCA, if, for example, if Priscilla, if a school had a need for instruction, could GCA then consider down the road as part of perhaps a strategy to begin to buy services instead of just giving out money?
Well, yes.
Not to put you on the spot here or anything.
Well,
That's something to think about.
yes. I mean, some of this is semantics. I mean, in order to receive a grant, you have to lay out what services you're going to do.
Mhm.
And then we're paying you to do those services. We could hire Priscilla and her venue to carry out some project, some service, to provide training to artists who want to open their own venue or who want, something like that. We can do that right now. And so we can, hire a Center for Nonprofits to offer training classes, or, just like we would hire a service to provide catering for a meeting. So we can already do that right now.
A non-monetary possibility. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but Georgia is right up there for being number one with doing business. It's great in a lot of areas. Anything not for profit, it's not. But anything for profit, they'll do anything they can to attract you here. Right now, the threshold to incentivize a business to relocate to Georgia, the threshold is set so high that normal sole proprietor, studio operated artists would never on earth be able to qualify. So, perhaps, we all can look at trying to find those ways and means to incentivize the sole proprietor artists or the LLC artist studios to relocate to Georgia, so it's more of an artist-friendly state.
Yeah.
But that would be working with economic development and legislature and all that kind of fun stuff. But between now and the next session, we can begin to pursue some things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But super happy to hear that you have the tour coming up soon. Just for the recording too, what was the date for Savannah?
Savannah is May 3rd.
That's okay. That's what I heard.
Got the right date.
So you're doing back to back. Okay.
Yeah. Tifton and Savannah are back to back. So we'll be May 3rd, probably at the Telfair. I need to nail that down. Probably like 11-ish, something that morning.
I'll send you Stuart Miller's information. Maybe we can get you in at the relatively new art center that we opened.
I talked to Stuart and he said they're all booked up.
We'll see about that. No, just
Okay.
Well, never mind. So Tina, thank you so much for coming in today and give us the updates.
Thank you all.
And it's great to hear that you're all looking to reach out to begin putting into place a new plan. I think 18 or somewhere in 19, you had originally had one of the first strategic plans, if I recall correctly, that had happened, a wider reach than it had been before.
Yeah.
So this is going to be another step in the right direction.
Well, I hope so. I think as our budget was cut over the last decade, 10, 15 years, and our focus narrowed, then I think we narrowed into, just exclusively talking to and working with the nonprofit arts community. And I think even though we're small, we can't, do 500 things, but we need to think about where the rest of the state falls outside the individual artists, the for-profit arts endeavors, all of those things, and what we're able to do for those segments of the state.
Yep. And I know throughout the year, we can always do do a lot of reacting to what the legislature is trying to do, but at the same time, if we see opportunity, we can push that agenda. And one of those, as you full well know, and for anybody else joining us for the first time today, it may not bring in a lot of money, but sometime, hopefully this year, we can get enough sponsors to give Tina some money from from both a license plate, which is already approved. We just need enough people to want to purchase, as well as a state refund checkoff box. So it won't bring in a whole lot of money, but I'm pretty confident that if we can throw some more money at Tina, she knows where it can be put for best use. So Tina, thank you so much for your time today. And I know, I think you had mentioned you also have some other meetings lined up.
Now I'm going to hang out.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Talk everybody.
So let's expand our horizon a little bit and just look at the entire Southeast. And we have Charles in from South Arts here to share with us updates from South Arts. So Charles, it is all about you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Patrick. And it seems really appropriate to talk about South Arts next because Tina serves on our board of directors. So really glad to follow you, Tina, and really interesting just to hear these conversations about support of individual artists and fiscal sponsorships and everything. So I'm glad I was here just to sit in on that conversation. And I'm going to do a couple things today. Patrick asked for a little bit of a look at what's happening in the region. So I've got a few things about that topic. And then I was going to talk some about South Arts and specific opportunities that we have for organizations and individual artists. But before I do that, I've kind of gotten a sense a little bit of like who's in the room from folks who spoke up. And of course, I know what Patrick does. I know what Tina does. But if you haven't already spoken up, would you mind just putting in the chat a little bit about what brings you here today? Are you an artist? Are you an administrator? Are you a patron? It'd just be helpful when I get to the part about talking about what we offer. It'd be great just to know who I'm speaking to so I can try to maybe speak to what might be most of interest to you. So if you don't mind throwing that in the chat, I'll take a look and I really appreciate it. So a little background first on South Arts. Our mission is advancing Southern vitality through the arts. We believe that the American South has a distinct and unique culture arising from our complicated history, our blend of ethnicities, and our shared experiences. We use the arts to celebrate where we've been, but more importantly, to help create our path forward together. And the arts and the opportunity for all people to create and benefit from the arts have the power to build stronger communities and a more vibrant, successful South. So that's who we are. We are one of 6 regional organizations around the country that are all called something like, Region of the Arts or Foundation or Alliance or something like that. And we serve 9 states, North Carolina, south to Florida, west to Louisiana, and then north to Kentucky. So in that region, and there you go. You're right, Priscilla. We used to be the Southern Arts Federation. So there you go, or Southeastern Arts Federation. Yeah. So great. Talking a little bit about the sector in the Southeast. And I'll talk both about kind of the broader creative sector and also nonprofit arts and culture. Some data that I think is really interesting and just kind of an interesting frame to thinking about how the pandemic has affected us. If we look at where we were even before this unprecedented and tragic couple of years that we faced, not just our sector, but all of society, all the world, we're already really kind of under-resourced as a sector in the South. There's a report from late 2020 called Freedom Maps, Activating Legacies of Culture, Art, and Activism in the U.S. South. This is from Ignite Arts Dallas at SMU and Alternate Roots based in Georgia. And this report reminds us, yeah, absolutely, that people in our field are not just making art, they're also active in social justice, building on traditions of cultural organizing in this region. And this work is so important, all the many dimensions of arts work in communities. Yet on a per capita basis, the arts sector in our region receives $4.21 per capita compared to $8 in the West, $9 in the Midwest, and $16 in the Northeast. So clearly a big gap. So that was even before the pandemic started. And clearly a lot has happened since then. I mean, one report that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is just the impact on individual artists as well as the creative sector. And the Brookings Institute has a really interesting study called Lost Art, Measuring COVID-19's Devastating Impact on America's Creative Economy. And this looked at losses just from April to July in our field, state by state, and also at the largest metro areas in the South, or actually in the whole country, but we can see a few in the South. And in Georgia, over just that 4-month period, 86,000 jobs were lost and $4 billion in sales. That report looked at a 2.5-year recovery timeline, but of course, back in August of 2022, we didn't know, how long the pandemic would last. So interesting questions that brings up are just how long the pandemic's going to continue and how long the recovery will take. And then, thinking about the fact that we were already under-resourced. And one last study, just thinking about the state of the region that just came out last week is called Studying Early Pandemic Data, Did Giving Sustain the Arts, also from SMU Data Arts. And the short version is that contributed revenue has been a declining percentage of operating budgets of nonprofit arts organizations, but that trend reversed in 2020. Not a big surprise considering the decrease in earned revenue from ticket sales, things like that. But if you look a little deeper, I think there's an interesting learning from that about the percent increase in contributed support for budgets was especially large at smaller organizations and BIPOC-led organizations. So I think those are interesting things to consider about the state of our field, considering that we're already under-resourced and the ethnic diversity that we have in the South. Thinking about funding in the region, many of you know about the federal funding that has come into the sector through Relief and Recovery, and I won't talk about that. And there's also the National Arts Action Summit coming up. But within our region, just the 9 states that we serve, we've seen several states invest American Rescue Plan funding into arts and culture recovery. And Tina talked about the request they put into the state of Georgia. Tennessee and North Carolina have done kind of arts nonprofit funding. In South Carolina, they dedicated some of their ESSER funds to arts education, which was really interesting. We've seen some other things happen, like Florida putting money towards cultural facilities. And there have been really significant investments that have happened on a city or county level. Americans for the Arts was tracking this. It doesn't look like people have been putting information in there since late last year. But it's interesting to look at that data, and it's not always major metro areas that are investing these dollars. We have some examples of rural communities doing that too. One thing that we at South Arts are doing is trying to see how we can better support advocacy in our 9-state region. And so we now have advocacy organizations active in 8 of our 9 states. Mississippi is the one state where there is not currently an organization like Georgians for the Arts, but there is interest in starting one. And I bring that up because you may know artists and administrators in other states across the region. And if you weren't aware, you can encourage them to get involved in other groups like Georgians for the Arts that all have an arts day, that all have ways of being members and being active in action alerts and things like that. So I'd encourage you too to tell your artist friends in other parts of the region and the country to take a look at what's happening on an advocacy level in their states. But we're now starting to convene these groups. Actually, Patrick and I were just hanging out with several other statewide advocacy organizations earlier. And through this group, we're learning about policy agendas in each state, how statewide grants and advocacy are funded, and a host of other questions. One thing that they've been sharing information with each other about is the license plate programs, which exist in a number of other states as well. And some of these conversations happen on a national level as well, but it seems like there's a lot of value to speaking as a region, given the similarities that we have in terms of political environments, history, demographics, things like that. And so I want to thank Patrick for participating in that group and hope it continues to be a good resource for the future. So if I had to sum up kind of the state of the arts as we see it in the region, there is a long-term challenge of resources. But there are a lot of bright spots where recovering is going especially well, and of course opportunities for lots of other regions to leverage this moment of recovery. And we are, I think, somewhat optimistic and hopeful about the longer term, thinking about the growing population of the South and the interest in funders at a local, regional, and national level in investing in equity and the kind of unique role that the arts can play in helping to lift up voices and having an inclusive, diverse, equitable sector and world. So I'd like to talk a little bit about South Arts now. And I'm going to take a brief look at the chat and see we have a great artist, producer, activist. We have an Indian classical dance artist. We have an executive director of a nonprofit. Great, great, great. Thank you all, public artists and executive director of the Museum of Arts and Sciences. Great. Well, it's so great to see you all here. Thank you for sharing a little bit about what you do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about South Arts and share some specific opportunities that may be of interest to you, given all those different ways in which you are seeking for funding for your work, or you may know others who are doing the same. So again, I talked a little bit about our mission earlier, but just again, that mission is advancing Southern vitality through the arts. And I'll just say this has been a really exciting time at South Arts. We're in a period of rapid change and growth. We've been expanding into new disciplines and communities. So some of what, even if you've been aware of South Arts in the past, some of what I'm going to talk about today may be new. So, so that's exciting, right? Hopefully there will be something for even those of you who've spent a little bit of time with us in the past. And again, that is our region, 9 states. We're kind of right in the middle in Atlanta, which is where our offices are. And each of these states has its own arts council, or in some cases it's called a commission. And we create a platform through South Arts for each of these states to come together to address common challenges and opportunities, to collaborate and amplify their work within the region. South Arts also provides programs and services that individual states can't necessarily do on their own, things like touring programs, and that help advance the arts for the entire region. Here are our strategic goals. And I won't read what's on the page, but just to give a little more depth to this, our strategic goals are about raising the visibility of the arts in the South. And so these are about ways that we can do that, whether we're working with artists and organizations to help make them more successful and visible, whether we're connecting and convening people, trying to understand the needs of Southern communities and demonstrate how challenges can be addressed through the arts. And then partnerships are really important. Partnerships like this with Georgians for the Arts, this helps us find resources and connections, as well as share information about resources to advance the Southern vitality that we seek to work on behalf of. And another really important partnership that I don't want to forget is our relationship with the National Endowment for the Arts. We're founded as an affiliate of the NEA, as all the regionals were back 50, 60 years ago. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about funding opportunities, and I will start with organizations. And when we say organizations, I mean broader than just nonprofit arts organizations. Some of these opportunities are also open to colleges and universities, or libraries, or municipalities, performing arts and museums, all kinds of different venues. And you'll see that most of our grant programs offer Southern communities access to the arts by fostering meaningful engagement with arts and artists. For example, presentation grants. These support communities engaging with Southern artists for performances, literary presentations, visual arts, or film. We also have our traditional arts touring grants, which promote the appreciation of traditional arts in the South by supporting community residencies by traditional artists and folklorists. Express grants are quick turnaround funding for organizations in small communities that want to book a performing artist, as well as visiting literary, visual, or film artists. And last but not least, cross-sector impact grants, which these are grants for organizations to partner up with non-arts organizations for arts projects that address community issues such as arts and literacy, arts and the environment, arts and healthcare, arts and partnerships, broadly speaking. We also have a number of programs that support an organization's staff and individual artists as well. So we are doing, and I've mentioned already a couple times, but at South Arts, we're doing a lot of work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA. One of the outcomes of that work is the Emerging Leaders of Color program, aimed at arts administrators and cultural workers of color in the South. This is professional development and team building workshops for 11 to 13 participants at no cost. And we are now with our second cohort of emerging leaders and are exploring ways to expand this program to have a national reach. We also have professional development and artistic planning grants that support more general staff development for arts organizations, activities like attending conferences or trainings, seeing live work, or planning meetings with other artists. And we periodically offer scholarships that help people attend conferences or fee-based programs that South Arts is sponsoring or promoting. Oops, I did not mean to go so far ahead. Sorry about that. But our next slide is about individual artists, and we do a couple different things in this area as well. The first I'll mention is the Southern Prize and State Fellowship Program, which is a competition showcasing the best of visual arts in the South. Through an application and panel process, one visual artist from each of our states is named the State Fellow and receives a $5,000 prize. Here you see Myra Green, the current State Fellow from Georgia. And from those 9, the Southern Prize winner is selected, winning a $25,000 cash award, and the runner-up receives a $10,000 prize. We also have individual artist career opportunity grants. This helps artists take advantage of potential career-changing opportunities like participating in a major exhibition or presenting or performing work at a renowned festival and event. Next, I'm going to tell you a little bit about programs that do not involve grants, but engage Southern communities with the arts. First example is the Southern Circuit, a tour of independent films that brings filmmakers to Southern communities. Community screening partners help curate the films and host Q&A sessions with filmmakers. This year, we have screening partners in Georgia in the cities or towns of Hapeville, Oxford, and Atlanta. But many of the screenings and Q&As are also streaming online, so you can check them out there as well. Momentum is a dance initiative for touring modern dance and contemporary ballet in the South and beyond. And we have some significant programs that are the result of partnerships with regional and national funders, such as In These Mountains, a partnership with the State Arts Councils in Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina, and the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies to preserve and present folk and traditional arts of Central Appalachia. We also have Jazz Road, which is a national program in partnership with the other regional arts organizations, Doris Duke Charitable Trust and Andrew Mellon. It's a touring and residency program to promote jazz throughout the country, strengthen work opportunities and compensation for jazz artists, and bolster deep engagement between jazz musicians, presenters, and communities. The Creative Placemaking Leadership Summit, which is an annual regional conference in the South, brings together arts and community leaders to demonstrate how arts, culture, and creativity can offer solutions to major community challenges. South Arts sponsors the Southern Regional Conference with creative placemaking communities, and we are planning the next summit to take place in the fall. So please stay tuned for information about that. It won't be too far away from you because it's within our 9-state region. And last, but certainly not least, Arts Ready, which is an online tool to help arts organizations with crisis planning and management. Whether it's a man-made or natural disaster, we all know that preparation is key if arts organizations are to survive. And especially we've had some pretty significant natural disasters in our region, whether it's tornadoes in Kentucky or hurricanes or floods along the Gulf Coast. So this is a really important resource that we offer to help organizations survive and thrive. So speaking of a crisis, we've done a number of kind of special things because of things that have happened because of COVID. And again, I don't have to tell you how much the arts have suffered during this time. And then it's not like we were able to flip a switch. I mean, Tina was talking about how many patrons are still not in a place of necessarily coming back like they were before. So we're not really entirely out of this yet. But in response to the pandemic, South Arts implemented 4 new programs. With the Doris Duke Foundation, we launched Jazz Road Quick Assist grants to provide relief for jazz artists. And these were 450 artists nationwide that received a $1,000 grant to help them through this difficult time for performers. We also, through the Federal CARES Act, worked with the National Endowment for the Arts for relief funds across the region. This money went through the state arts agencies like Georgia Council for the Arts, and then they distributed these funds to assist rural arts organizations and culturally specific organizations within their states. We also targeted funds to statewide arts service organizations in order to further expand the reach of these funds. And with funds from the American Rescue Plan, we worked with each of the southern states to magnify their recovery plans for the arts by augmenting grants to rural and BIPOC arts organizations as well. We also targeted funding to help strengthen arts advocacy networks and create new jobs for artistic and creative workers. And one thing this pandemic has made clear is, the sector really needs more help in being resilient in the long run. So a couple other things that happened along those lines of resiliency, had a new partnership with the Andrew Mellon Foundation to launch the U.S. Regional Arts Resilience Fund. And we supported organizations with deep impact across our 9 states and region with an emphasis on historically under-resourced organizations, populations, communities, and art forms. Last thing in this section is also a partnership with the Kennedy Center around identifying Southern artists for the Arts Across America series. So the last thing I'll mention program-wise, and then happy to hear any questions or things y'all have, is Southern Cultural Treasures. And this is a new partnership, multi-million-dollar partnership with the Ford Foundation and many local funders to make multi-year investments in BIPOC-led and serving cultural organizations. These grants will help them supporting their long-term sustainability and resiliency. So we are in the midst of the application process right now, and also talking with local funders about matching those investments. So we're really excited about this as an opportunity to build some relationships with new organizations who we haven't worked with in the past. And stay tuned for more news about how we will be planning to extend these kind of benefits and services to a much broader constituency across the South. And in case you didn't know what our website is, it's southarts.org. I will be delighted to answer any questions or talk more about anything I talked about. And also, I may say in some of these things that I really encourage you to talk to the staff member who runs the grant program, because I'm myself kind of in a bit of a hybrid role with advocacy and partnerships and things like that being a little bit in my plate. But I'll do my best to answer questions about any of the things that I talked about in terms of kind of the state of the region and or any of the specific programs. But thanks so much for having me here. I've enjoyed listening so far and curious to hear what else y'all want to talk about.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Charles. I think, Charles, there's one thing, maybe you said it, but maybe I didn't hear it. Your role there at South Arts is a new role. It's a new initiative that Susie and the board and everybody has felt that's very important. So that being said, and I think you've been there, not that long, and you kind of dove right into all this. What was the catalyst for bringing you on in this particular role? And what does South Arts envision now? Because you are going to be the miracle worker.
Well, I don't think I'm here to be a miracle worker, and but it's kind of you to to say nice things. And I mean, I think South Arts, like a lot of the regionals, is growing a lot. And there are a few things that we were interested in doing that didn't fall clearly into any department. Advocacy is one of the areas, and that's part of the reason why I'm spending some time with the state arts, the statewide arts advocacy organizations. But more broadly, the thought is that we're interested in the long run, how are we able to be how are we, just like all the organizations I think are thinking about, like, how are we able to be sustainable? So how are we planning for the future? How are we developing our plans? And so my work is really in a lot of ways about planning. So that includes fundraising to an extent. It includes some of our advocacy efforts, and we'll see where this goes from here. But there's some other partnerships we're working on that are not probably quite ready for for sharing in a public forum, but you'll be hearing about pretty soon. We think partnerships are really key to our work as well. So those are the main things that I'm working on. Thanks for asking, and hope that we can continue bringing great opportunities to y'all. And I'll just add, I don't think we see ourselves as like the saviors of the arts sector in the region by any means, but what we are is a link between some of the national funders and resources and the local and state level. Because what we're finding and what we found during the pandemic is that whether it's the NEA or some of these national foundations, even though they are national organizations, they don't have the capacity to work with every single metro area or even every single state, because they're such a big country, and the needs of the South are very different than some of the needs of the Northeast or the Midwest or the West. So we played a really important role as a linkage. And so, how we have these conversations with y'all and what we hear from y'all is really important, and being in relationship with y'all is really important as well.
I think that, whenever I see a communication come out from South Arts with a new opportunity for funding, organization, individual, or somewhere else in between, I always think to myself that you, among all the possibilities, you're the one that is often perhaps lost. And so I'm gonna put all the folks here on the spot. If you receive communications from South Arts about their funding opportunities or the like, would you raise your virtual hand? Okay. So head over to southarts.org, subscribe to the email list that they have going on. There are a lot of these funding opportunities and other initiatives that I think are underused. I won't say underappreciated, because they're very well appreciated, but they're underused. And perhaps other states in the South are taking advantage of this stuff more than the Georgians. So let's inundate South Arts with Georgians. So does anybody else here have any questions? Tina, you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, being on the board for South Arts, we, get a lot of the reports and the numbers and the data and who applied for what. And I'm always really proud that Georgia usually ranks up there second or third in the number of applicants for each program, behind Florida, which has a massively higher number of arts organizations than we have, and sometimes North Carolina. But I agree with you, we can always do more. And I think there are a lot of folks that don't know what South Arts is doing, and we can do more to get the word out.
I can tell you, I appreciate that, Tina. And I mean, it's something our board challenges us about a lot, is what are we doing to, be more aggressive in getting the word out? Especially, I think, as we look at more and more opportunities, that happen for individual artists, it means you have to have a broader net, right? And a program like Southern Cultural Treasures was open to organizations with fiscal sponsorship. Not all of our programs are. Some of it depends on the, what our, the funders who provided the money are willing to let us do. But in any event, we know that we have a task ahead of us of continuing to build relationships and share information just added a new member of our marketing and communications team to develop more digital content. So there's more coming from us, but I really appreciate it. And it's also part of just like showing up in all these spaces. So one of my colleagues spoke to at Kentucky Arts Day on Friday. We just spoke to Florida a couple of weeks ago. Nate has never asked us to talk to North Carolina. So, I'm going to be on his case about that, but we want to show up in all these spaces and, y'all to see that we're humans and that we want to talk to y'all and want to work with you. So we have to do the work both on the, the digital side and also the relationship building side.
Fantastic, fantastic. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask Charles while he's with us? Okay. Charles, thank you so much for sharing with us all the things South Arts has done, is doing, and will be doing. Hopefully everybody here will take advantage of all the resources that you provide and make available. So again, both to Tina and to Charles, thank you for those insights. Moving on to part of the advocacy training, just to kind of get several of you kind of, I don't want to say indoctrinated, but introduced to being an advocate and how simple it can be. So I'm going to turn over to Priscilla here in a moment. But the first thing I want to do is, if you haven't had a moment to explore georgiansforthearts.org, I do want to share with you briefly a few items that you may be interested in. Some tools that you have available to you, either today or in the future or somewhere else in between. So just to do a quick walkthrough of a couple of quick things here. So we do have the main section up here is going to be your advocacy and education. One of the main items here of kind of a hub is going to be that the Arts Action Center. Whenever you see a Arts Action alert come out, 10 to 1 is going to be redirected back to this page, covering anything that we feel needs attention brought to it, to the point where we want you to take action. We want you to contact your representative or representatives. We have this page right now. It's populated with all of the federal issues happening right now. And right now, Americans for the Arts has their advocacy alert for asking Congress to support the creative economy bills. So I've not done this today. I don't think I've done this one yet. It's a brand new one. So this is how simple it is, both for federal as well as state. So I'm already set up in both of these, so it's even easier for me. So in this particular case, there is one active campaign that I've not done yet. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to Americans for the Arts, their Arts Action Alert. And this platform here, it's called Voter Voice. And it's the same platform that Georgians for the Arts has on its site, but for the state level. So in this particular one, I've already signed up for it, so already knows who I am. And I don't usually contribute any sort of special message or anything. But I know what all this says, and I'm totally pro everything here, so I don't have to read this. I've seen that before. But it's already populated this particular message for both my senators as well as my particular House representative. And so if you don't know yours, all you have to do is plug in your home address, and it will populate that for you. So all the work kind of done for you. And then what you can do from there, you can take their basic message. So in this case here, as a constituent, I want you to agree to these bills. So you take their message and just, attach your name to it and send. Alternatively, if you want to customize it, then you have, of course, the option to customize it from scratch, or drop in some other special note that you want to convey. So in this case here, I'm going to let the message be as it is, both to my senators and my House representative. I'm going to send. And if I hadn't talked quite so much, that would have taken about 15 seconds. That's about as difficult as it needs to be on most occasions. If we head back over to the Arts Action Center, we can also see now the state campaigns. And the one that you should have already seen before is supporting HB 821. And this was the bill that would allow us as Georgians to be able to write off part of our refund. And the funds go to GCA. So I can't do this one. I've already done this one. But all the information that you would need to understand the bill, why it's important, is here. And again, in my particular case, it knows who I am. And so my representative, and this is a House bill, not a Senate bill. So therefore, my only representative is Edna Jackson. So again, I can add in my own little story or not, and push send, and boom, that would have taken about 15 seconds. Also on this Art Advocacy Center page, if you don't know who your representatives are, we give you the option for that. So I am, oops, come on, here we are. So I will look up my information again. Got that today. So once I give it my information, I can then contact everybody that oversees, or represents me at all levels of government. So we have all the federal, Congress, and then I have all of the other ones. And if I want to send a special note to Edna Jackson at a local level, boom, I have her information. I don't even have to pick up the phone now to find out, what her number is. So finding your representatives, easy peasy. Campaigns, I already showed you. All right, now I have no petitions in the works. One thing that Priscilla reminded me about is the license plate. They've already, the House has already passed the legislation, and we can already do this. The challenge is it takes like 2,000 people to agree to purchase a license plate before we can actually put this into production. And so a survey that's been out there for some time is basically, would you support a license plate that gives back to the arts? So you can go over here and, do you support a license plate? And if so, would you commit to being one of the first 1,000 and provide a little bit of money to make that happen? So that's your basic survey. The last thing I'll share here is, we have tracked legislation and then its status. So I'm just going to go over to the tracked legislation. And this is what I mentioned yesterday on the last, I think it's last 3 pages of the program guide. So this is a list of all of the legislation that Georgians for the Arts is currently tracking. I don't think Mala is still on the line here. She has been going back and forth between here and actually doing some work on the HB 1330, which is one of the ones that we're tracking. So 1330, we can click through and find out exactly where it's at. So right now it crossed over, which means it's going to be going over to the Senate, and maybe it'll get past this cycle or the session or not. Well, we can read the bill, what actions have been taken, how things are being voted, other documents, more details. So you can see everything that's currently in play. If you go over to the legislative status, it will break this information down by kind of where it is. Has it been introduced? crossed over, somewhere else in between. So you have all of these resources available to you. This page here for the advocacy training, we're still updating this with even more information. I'm going to go ahead and do a shout out to Nate with North Carolina. They already have a fantastic video series to get you all primed and ready to go for advocacy. So definitely take a look at that one. The one on the left here is like 25 minutes. We won't show that today, but that is an actual meeting that we had with one House representative during last year. And then we do have a couple of shorter videos here to share with you. And last but not least, Election Central. Yesterday's conversation, we were talking about candidate platforms, questionnaires, and the like. So over the years, we have a few items. We're getting more and more and more every year. This has to be updated, and it will be within the next week once we have new information from Americans for the Arts. But right now, for both candidate education, as well as your own information, if you like, we have everything here that a candidate would need to know to better understand where, why arts and culture is indeed important at all levels of government. So Americans for the Arts has to do their updating with 2002. So we'll see that soon, as well as the fact sheet, which you already have a copy of, the more recent copy. You want to know what you should be asking for? Well, here's your summary of asks. You want to know more information? Well, head over here to the Congressional Handbook, and they have more information in there than you would ever need. On and on and on. There's a lot of information here that can be shared with candidates running for office. We mentioned before through Tina, the Arts and Economic Prosperity Report, the economic data that covers the state of Georgia. We have a lot of information here. So, I'm not going to go through all these in great detail. I want to hand over to Priscilla, let her speak to, what it means to advocate for the arts and how easy or how difficult it can be, which, it's a kind of a non-secret that it's not that hard. So Priscilla, I talked kind of fast there, but why don't you go ahead and do your thing?
Well, you pretty much covered the nuts and bolts aspect of what I was going to do. So, and that's fine. Is there anybody on here? I mean, I know a bunch of y'all don't need the nuts and bolts part of finding your legislators. If you'll raise your hand.
That's only Priscilla and not the entire session.
Oh no.
Yeah, there you are, Priscilla, you're back.
Oh man, spent all this money for upgrades. So anyway, if you need to figure out about contact, who your legislators are and those kinds of questions, can you raise your hand? I'd rather not spend time doing that with people who already know what's going on about that. I mean, I know most of you that I know on here already know how to do all of that. So my little slideshow would have been redundant. The one thing that I would add, and I'll put it in the chat, is in addition to Americans for the Arts that's on our website, we also, there's a new organization that newish organization that I've been turned on to, mostly by Jessica Holland, who is on the call, the creativecoalition.org, which is a different advocacy organization that has a little bit of a different structure and came out of feeling like there needs to be yet another voice in the national arts advocacy realm. And so I highly recommend. One of the things that I've learned is that if you're familiar with how state legislatures from state to state are being provided legislation to advocate for, that tends to be, I mean, a lot of the reproductive freedom bills that are so similar going from state to state. There are other kinds of legislation that are being proposed. For example, that any organization that is any arts organization is prohibited from requiring or denying access because of refusal to wear a mask, which is scary. So we need to be paying attention to those kinds of things. And I think there are, let's watch each other's back and be paying attention to that. The Creative Coalition, I think, is doing a lot of that kind of tracking. I will learn more as we go forward. One thing that I want to say is, and some will be aware, in 2019, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. The legislative district I live in Georgia, was not going to have an opponent to the incumbent. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and part of the way I identify myself is as an artist. And so I think we need to be encouraging of other artists to run for office.
Thank you, Comcast. Let me do this. Does anybody have any specific questions about the advocacy that we can go ahead and address while we're together? And then, of course, we'll share a bunch of resources that can help fill in some of the gaps.
Hello, am I back?
I was asking if there's any specific questions. We'll provide some additional materials afterward, but we don't want to eat up that time to go through everything from the beginning to the end. Okay, I don't think so. Okay. Priscilla, do you want me to show the sampling?
I don't think I mean, we got 7 minutes left. I don't know that I think I don't think we need to do that.
Okay, fair enough.
That's observable on our website. We
Yes.
can go there to do it.
Okay.
I was just making a pitch for people for running for office. Did you hear that, or
We started
did I
here,
crash?
yes.
Okay, so run for office. Get artists to run for office.
Yeah.
Say the things that need to be said by running for office, even if you are like me and there's not a lot of chance of your getting elected. We can do that seriously, and it matters. I know that there are people who felt better engaged with our democracy because I ran and because I said some of the things that I said. So that's part of my pitch. Gosh, my computer crashing has interrupted my thought process, and I apologize for that. I also believe that you need to do what we did and we talked about yesterday with questioning publicly people who are running for office. We need to ask them their opinions and get them on the record, get them used to having to be responsive. That in the Southeast, it's $4 and change per capita, and then in the Northeast it's $12 and change. Did I hear that right? $12, 64 times as much in the Northeast than here? That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so we have to work to change that. The way we do it is by talking and talking, and not only advocating with our elected officials, but talking with our communities as well, and talking at every level, talking with county commissioners, city council people, mayors, and so forth and so on. And I will repeat what I have said before, what was said yesterday, that it's amazing to go to the state capitol to meet your legislators, or to go to your state capitol to the offices of your legislators at the local level and talk to them. During the recent presidential administration, I frequently was at the offices of David Perdue, who is now running for governor, and I never got to meet him. I've met with my state senators, my state legislators, my members of the House, talk to them on the phone, have their private cell phone numbers. It's not hard to do. They need you more than David Perdue needed us, I guess. I don't know. I think all of that's kind of crazy, but anyway, it's very accessible, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. I'll put my name in the chat and my email address for people who want to, anybody want to talk to me. I'll be happy to talk to you one-on-one about getting together, and so that you can do some personal advocacy. I'm better with the one-on-one under those kinds of circumstances, especially given the time crunch that we're in. What are we asking for is kind of the question. And I think that's one of the things that we at Georgians for the Arts need to get together about. And so in addition to doing the summit annually, we need to have a richer conversation among us. Those of us who take the time to attend this, those of us who take the time to contact our legislators in one way or another, we need to talk to each other. How do we change the attitudes around what's going on with funding for the arts and funding for culture? We are workers. I recently applied for a Fulton County grant, and in Fulton County, you got to be a resident of Fulton County to be eligible for their funding as an individual artist. Well, if I'm a road builder, I don't have to live in Fulton County to provide the service of building a road. So why is it that I have to live there to provide the service in the place where I do my business? All of those kinds of questions are things that we need to be addressing, and we have to talk to each other, and it just is being more and more and more demanding on us and our time, and I don't know any way around it other than to keep doing it. And I'm profoundly grateful to Patrick and his leadership and Georgians for the Arts, to all of you for being here. Please hit me up and let's talk about what we need to be asking for. But and also to reemphasize that it's not asking for something that we aren't already providing. You know, it's asking to recognize what reality already is. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, and a large part of it is mentioned yesterday. It is in large part reacting to what is happening. We go back over to the Arts Action Center. We can look at the legislation that we are tracking. Like I said before, Mala is not here today because she has to react to the legislation that is currently before some of the committees so that it can pass this session. That's reactive. That's reactive. We can also be proactive. If we see things that we want, we can begin pushing that agenda. When Tina was talking, looking at, incentivizing, small businesses that meet the threshold of an artist and artist studio, that is not something that they are probably going to think of naturally. So we take the idea, we flush out the idea, we find the right person who would help to introduce this to the House It may get traction, it may not get traction, but it's not that hard to do. We're going to wrap this up. Gabrielle Mertz is here with us again this year. She was with us last year, and I think it was unquestionable that we left on a high note with her. And she's back again. Thank you very much. Her full bio is in the program guide. I think the really great thing is she wears a whole lot of hats, And this year is going to be really interesting. She is, still providing a lot of counsel to a certain gubernatorial candidate here in the state of Georgia, as was before, and as she'll be doing again. And we may just very well have our first, pro-arts governor in the state of Georgia since I don't know when. And that's all going to be because of Gabrielle's contribution to the cause. Gabrielle, it's all about you now. Take it away.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. Although now I hope I can live up to that. And I certainly, I'm not, I can only speak for myself here today. I'm not, I would never purport to speak for anybody else. But I certainly join you in our hope that one day soon we will have a pro-arts governor for the state of Georgia. Really a lot of the thanks go to all of you all, everyone at Georgia for the Arts and across the cultural sector in Georgia, for the work that you all have done to date and that you keep doing. I know it's an ongoing, what feels like a never-ending battle, but you're doing really important work. Your work is hugely important, not just because it's supporting the arts, but also because you are activating the power of the state, of communities, of businesses, of people all across Georgia. And I want to talk to you today about power. Let's talk about power. We often hear about power when it's used and abused, about lack of access to power and misuse of power. But the arts are powerful, and you, all of you here today, are powerful. You are powerful because the power of the arts, of music and film and dance and visual art and the creative outpouring that comes out of the cultural sector. But you are also powerful because the arts are the economic and innovation engine that powers the state and reaches beyond its borders across the region and the country and even around the globe. We know the impact of artists and arts leaders from Georgia is far-reaching. We can see it in films and television shows and performances and paintings and sculptures made in Georgia and shown worldwide. We can hear it in music and albums and songs produced by artists here. We can feel it from choreographers and dancers and theater makers and so many other creative producers. And we can sense it. The nation is looking to Georgia more than ever. And what we do has reached far beyond the state. The country is also watching to see what Georgia does, how it votes, what legislation it passes or doesn't pass, and how we respond to and rise to the moments before us. We know this, and we know that this is a time of challenges and opportunities. We know that Georgia is near the top in the quantity and quality of the production of creative projects and output, yet it's near the bottom in arts funding. We know that individual artists and freelance arts workers and small business owners in the creative sector are doing the majority of this work and are the drivers of this success, yet many are still struggling to survive. And our fragile healthcare system, our failure to expand Medicare, lack of affordable housing, and the continuing impact of the pandemic has left many in the community reeling. We know that the power of arts, the economic engine and creativity and innovation of the arts, the leadership of the cultural sector is at the core of the state's success and future. We know the arts is business. Business at its best, at its most impactful, forward-looking, and with an understanding of how values can and should be integrated into operations, of mission-centered work, of the importance of government, private sector, and the public working together to advance projects. Of the best that is Georgia, the ideas, the stories, imagination that is encompassed by the richness and diversity of the state. We know the cultural sector is a leader in using new technologies, new ways of thinking about audiences and viewpoints, and new approaches in innovation. We know the impact the cultural sector has on elections, on voter turnout. You've talked about that in yesterday and today, I think, a little bit. So we know this. The arts has power and real voice. This power is needed now more than ever. So let us not limit what we ask for or what we aspire to. Some people may try to tell you what is possible and what is impossible, how they think things are or used to be. Don't let them. You may encounter those that have outdated or incorrect pictures in their mind about Georgia, outdated notions about the power of Georgia communities, the diversity of ideas, of businesses, of art forms. Sometimes these outdated ideas are held by people in traditional positions of power or by an official. You may have to disabuse them of these notions. You can do it with a smile, because that's how we do it in Georgia, but disabuse them of it. Because make no mistake about it, Georgia is a modern, forward-moving powerhouse, rich in ideas, resources, and people that embody the best of the state. And our support of the arts and the creative community must match and rise to meet this power. Arts funding, which is really economic engine funding, needs to increase multifold. Support and support systems for individual artists and other creative needs to be bolstered. Structures that advance and incentivize a broad, inclusive range of artists and creative small businesses, not only film, but also music and visual art and the performing arts and others, need to be expanded. Every Georgian, every artist, every cultural worker, every small business owner needs to have access to quality, affordable healthcare and housing. Yet, I know you may not always feel powerful, but I'm here to tell you that you are, that your voices and your actions are incredibly powerful. So I urge you to grab a hold of your power and use it, to use it for good, to use it to advance the extraordinary work being done across Georgia, to use your voice to demand that the opportunities and promise of what is possible is made accessible to everyone across the cultural sector, from independent artists and arts workers and cultural organizations to businesses and community groups that work in the field, to everyone. That means making sure that every part of the state has a voice at the table, and that the diversity and richness that is Georgia is included in the progress forward. We know there's legislation and actions out there that we need to pay attention to and fight for or against. And you all are and have been discussing a lot of that. But I also want you to look for what's not out there, where there are gaps, what is not being done that could be done to make things better. You have the power to change those things, not just to respond to what's out there, but to lead the way. Use your power. Be empowered. Empower those that don't yet feel they have power or who have not yet been given access. Let's redefine power. Let's get out there and be powerful together. Thank you.
You delivered. You're all good. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's yeah, you said it all. Do we have time for any Q&A with you, Gabriel? Yep. You're on that wonderful mute thing. There we go.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah,
Awesome.
however,
Cool.
I'm here for you all, whatever you want.
Fantastic. Well, I'm not gonna, chime in here. I want everybody else to have a chance first. She's been doing this for a long time and has a lot of insight from various perspectives. So it's an invaluable resource, I think. Jessica, what did you want to ask?
Yeah, I just, I bothered you before through Facebook. But yeah, I'd love to volunteer to help with anything like arts, if there's an arts platform or something that your candidate is hoping to put together. And honestly, from my other work with the Political Action Committee, we would also extend that same offer to Kim's campaign. But, I remember, when Stacy ran last time, I was able to take a look at some of the platform initiatives, and her team was very responsive to some suggestions that, myself and others made, and I just want to help with that, especially around the economic development piece, like you said, thinking about freelancers, and then also just any advice on other organizations that we could collaborate with, during the election cycle and beyond, whether that's getting out the vote initiatives or, arts platform building. I know I've talked to the New Georgia Project. They're always so supportive of artists. And I think there's Progress Georgia. So yeah, just any advice you have on that.
Yeah, no, and you're right. There are a lot of organizations that are doing great work in Georgia and nationally who are also doing work in Georgia and together. And happy to, anybody is welcome to contact me. If you Google me, you can get my contact information and website, and I can put it in the chat as well. And I think some of you and Patrick and others have my email too, if you need to get a hold of me. But yeah, I'm certainly happy to also pass names on to folk and do my best to connect people. Yeah, I mean, I think you have a lot, certainly in the voter turnout and in the past few election seasons and races, particularly in Georgia, the cultural community has really, really done amazing work, and a lot in collaboration, and that kind of power in numbers, I think, and in coalition is incredibly important. And the group that I worked in tandem with a lot of other groups that's drawing out the vote, that worked across Georgia with different cultural groups and as well with voter groups. And there's a lot of, I think, coalition building that happens across all of these different groups. And so, yeah, and I'm sure, and there's almost so many that I could give you a big list, but you're more than welcome, any of you, to contact me, and I'm happy to connect you. It depends on sort of what you want to do and where the bandwidth is, and kind of where organizations are. Sometimes also there is a little bit of, as an individual, you can kind of get involved in multiple things, but sometimes there are limitations for legal or other reasons, as you well know, about kind of what an organization or a group, depending on what its status is, where it can get involved. But there's usually a place for everybody, but just sort of finding out where that is. And you're well aware of, I know, Jessica, about sort of some of that, the need to be careful about some of that. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are lots of opportunities. It's, I think the race has been kind of moving along, and now we're about to get into a phase where the activity will happen much more quickly. And certainly having more voices at the table to contribute to the brain trust, in my opinion, is always more helpful and always useful, particularly when it comes to best practices and policy recommendations and things like that. What I'd love to see also, and I know Georgians for the Arts is doing this and other groups, is to really not just informally, but look for ways that these groups can really coordinate and come together on whatever those key issues are, whether it's a policy position or whether it's demanding that every candidate in a particular race respond to a questionnaire, other things, because the more groups that band together and say, we are all standing together and we are all saying we would like responses for this questionnaire, or we all are in agreement that this policy position is the right one, is also useful. So the coalition building is not just about the kind of ideas of brainstorming, but also kind of showing and demonstrating power. Because I think sometimes in the arts, and I think part of this is because everybody is so busy and there's a million and one things to do. The more we can coordinate on that, I think the better. Even if it's just a matter of signing onto a letter where everybody says, okay, we agree on this thing. And we don't have to agree on everything, right? I mean, that's another mistake that I think sometimes people think to work in coordination, every group has to agree on every item. You don't. You have to just have consensus on certain things and then move forward on those things that you have consensus on. So anything that you all can find consensus among the array of different groups, the better, and come out publicly about that. And I'm certainly happy to be a part of that or help facilitate as best I can.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and you reminded me just, real quick that doing a position paper during the mayoral election was really helpful. And then I think we had over 200 people sign it within just a very short period of time. And also, if I may just put this out there, like mirroring some of, I'll show this book again, mirroring some of the things that at the, the federal level, I think down to the state, might make some of those connections, across borders more useful, perhaps. I don't know. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think it was you, but I think it was one of your colleagues that had made a lot of telephone calls and really did some great gathering of perspective when forming the original arts, culture, entertainment platform that was used during that last election. So hopefully it's going to be, refined even further. I don't think there's going to be much in comparison, especially with a former senator who, in addition to avoiding debates, he also avoids talking to his constituents. But I didn't say that on the record, did I? But there is a lot to do, and I'm completely with you. And we're going to have to come together and for this election and moving forward, have that more of a coalition type approach. Otherwise, we're all divided.
The other,
and we don't need to be divided.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, no, I agree. I was just going to add one additional thing, which is that or two things actually. One is that I also think it is useful to reach out to press in that process too, to be, because that's an extension of your public voice of, we've come to consensus on this and here, and reach out to press. I think that's something that doesn't always happen on the kind of arts policy side from the arts side, right? And sometimes it's because they try and you don't get the right response, or it doesn't get covered. But I think when there is consensus, to contact and be very public about that. And then as the kind of a sort of part B of that is to not be afraid to come out publicly in front, meaning prior to the questionnaires, prior to everything, but to say, this is where our position is, because in a way you're staking the land early and saying, here's what we expect, right? Rather than waiting to respond to any particular official saying, well, this is the breadcrumb we might give you, or this is the right. Instead, say, this is what's expected, because then it puts them in the position of either saying, oh, we can't do that, and having to explain why, right? But then there's a public position first that the cultural community has stated, this is what's necessary, this is what needs to happen. And I think there is something about being first out of the gate publicly about that.
Amen. Amen. Other questions? I think Marjorie's going to take you up an offer, talk about some public art projects, a pre-election momentum approach. That's great. But as you said too, and said a couple times earlier, being proactive is where it's all going to be at now. The reactive stuff, you don't get any traction, but being proactive is definitely the way to go. And I think with the, in terms of the mayoral race up in Atlanta, between, the candidate education guide as well as the mayoral forum, that's getting them on the record and pushing a very specific agenda. And, whoever does, win the election, because it's going to win the election, right? You have them then. You already have an audience with them. They know who you are.
I do think, I was just going to say, I do think, one of the challenges at, for example, with the arts funding issue, where Georgia being at the bottom, is that it's so far now at the bottom that even when you suggest, doubling it or tripling it, which would still put it way below where it needs to be, it's when you talk to officials, and I encounter this, right? It's hard, right? Once it's cut so low, it's so hard to get it back up. Because I think it was Priscilla was mentioning about how in other states where it's, $16 per, the thing is, artists and arts organizations in those states are also still struggling even at that level. So that tells you that funding is not even adequate. So that tells you sort of how far below Georgia is. And we get into this incremental thing where even if we talk about doubling the arts funding for Georgia, it's still way below. So part of it is, I think, making that case about how big that gap is, and where that to even come close, you're going to have to be, here. And I think the examples about looking at kind of also how it's regulated. The example, I think, again, that Priscilla gave about Fulton County and sort of residents and who has access to particular funding, even though it's low funding to begin with, is incredibly important. Because some of that I think really what needs to happen is, in addition to the policy part and policy recommendations, is you also need a best practices of, here are all the practices that Georgia is not doing, whether it's at the county level or the city level or at the state level, that Georgia is not doing, is not using best practices, and how that impacts, in this case, individual artists or arts projects or creative business owners or what have you. So I think both of those things need to happen. And in some ways, those are different things, although they're related.
Absolutely, positively. Anybody else want to pose a question while we have her until she gets back to making the world a better place? Fantastic, fantastic. I think you've inspired us all. At least
My
you did
pleasure.
me. At least you did me. So that's all I can say. So thank you for helping us to end on a high note. And I think we are just on time. I'm going to put Priscilla on the spot here. Would you like to share any of your reflection or other closing remarks, since we are still absent one of our board members?
Yeah. I'm so inspired by these gatherings. I'm troubled that there are so few of us on this call. How many no-shows we had from the registrations. I'm also aware of my own capacity limitations. I don't know of all the programs that South Arts has that I'm able to avail myself of potentially getting supported by. The capacity for staying on top of all of these things, it's enormous. And so I put it in the chat, how do we keep this conversation going? How do we stay in touch with each other? Yesterday, we're talking about touring. I'm in the chat. Let's make a statewide tour to go see all of each other's stuff and figure out what's going on and how can we be more unified. And Gabrielle, you were kind enough to support that idea. It's like, okay, so how do we do that? I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what the answer is. And all I know to do is keep putting one in front of the other. And at the same time, take heart from the people on this call. Tina Lilly has been at it at Georgia Council for God knows how long. Gabrielle, you've been at it for how long? Jessica, you've been at it for how long? I mean, we're all working our fannies off. And I'm still a practicing artist. What I do when I'm not trying to keep my little business up and running or make sure that legislators know that the things that they need to be aware of from their constituency. And I'm not the best at that, to be fair. At the city, county, state, and federal levels, I'm trying to make work. So we just have to be little evangelists and keep reminding people that they do have a voice. I'm really inspired by what you said, Gabrielle, about, I wrote it down, redefine power. And I've been, those words are not words that I've used, but I have been about that for a long time. And so, if you don't participate in democracy, then democracy then it's going to die. And we must do that in every way that we can. And I also profoundly believe that the act of making art is a revolutionary act. And so I think that's a power to hang on to. I hope we can stay in touch with each other a little bit better. Maybe we need to schedule quarterly calls or something where we have a Zoom and we just talk about what we're doing with each other so that we kind of maintain a little bit more connectivity and sort of activate our activist juices a little bit in this direction. It's very important to advocate for art, but as an activist, to be honest, my biggest concern right now is voter registration and the ways in which they are undermining our democracy by making it harder to vote. So I have spent more of my time outside of the world of making and presenting art. I spent more of my time advocating for voting issues than I have about art. And they're not mutually exclusive by any stretch of the imagination. And by having a venue, I am available for gatherings and so forth on other issues that need advocacy. But I've sort of proposed to y'all, and let's stay in touch with each other and let's reconvene in the summer, you know, for a Zoom call on a Saturday or a Sunday when people can do it, and see if we can start a little bit more momentum that way. I very much appreciate, yeah, and Jessica's in the chat. Let's create a policy agenda. Let's do it. And also, you know, let's get our children's arts activities to advocate. And I echo something I got off of a posting Jessica made years ago. I'm not an art supporter, I'm a participant. As an audience person, I'm a participant, and encourage all of our audiences and the parents of our children that we're educating around arts and culture to have that kind of an attitude. So it's, you know, people just don't realize this is our sector. All right, I'll stop rambling. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you all. So just to summarize a couple little things there, going back to the very first few minutes of the summit yesterday, Georgians for the Arts has been active for about 2 years. It was a product of Arts Georgia. They spun that off at just the perfect time when a pandemic hit. And we did get one event in at the Capitol, that was Cultural Capital, in before everything kind of went to heck in the handbasket.
Right before.
Yep. So trying to get traction has been a challenge, but what needs to happen is Georgians for the Arts is going to become that catalyst for change. Hopefully we are able to pull all these bodies together so that we can set a policy agenda, and as Gabrielle said, on a united front. It's long overdue. Every industry does it. They have great success, and there's no reason we can't do it either. So thank you all for being here. Get involved on the home front. Get involved with us here at Georgians for the Arts. You are all welcome to do whatever it is you want with us. You want to serve as a captain, if you will, in your particular town and your particular county and your particular district, House district, Senate district, whatever districts. Bring it on. We'll take you. We'll put you to work. More the merrier. Thank you all for attending this second annual Georgians for the Arts, Georgia Arts Action Summit, and have yourselves a great day.
Bye, everybody.